guys, how's it going? Kevin Cleary here with a knife video for you. Today, I have something pretty cool to share with you. This is a knife that I kind of missed the boat on. This is the Real Steel Lynx, and I haven't had a lot of Real Steels lately. I've got a couple. I think I've got one coming in the mail. I've got another one sitting here on the bench beside me that I'll share with you guys when we get to comparisons, because it's also this by the same designer, who is Ivan Bregnitz. And I have to say, I followed Ivan on Instagram for a while, ever since I reviewed a Kaiser that he designed a year or so ago, and he does a great job. His sort of overall just style really agrees with me, and I can't think of a single knife that he's designed that I don't look at it and go, man, that's a nice looking knife. That is really attractive. So I'm a big fan of Ivan's work at this point, and I definitely plan to have a few more of his designs coming through my hands. This particular knife stands out for a couple of reasons. Number one, this is a little more expensive, and I don't really pay a lot of attention to the higher end Real Steel stuff. I've sort of associated them in my mind with budget stuff, but this is extremely well done. And I've had a few knives that have been like that. The S51, the Megalodon, were both really exceptional in terms of giving just fantastic action and performance for a pretty moderate price point. And this takes that even to another level, because I like the detail on this a little bit more. It's a little more visually interesting and more attractive, I think, than either one of those two knives. All right. And the cool factor, the cool thing about this is this goes for like 200 and just over $200. But if you told me, like, if I didn't know and you just handed me this knife and said, hey, check out this cool new mid-tech I got, or, you know, this is a knife that I ordered for $500 or $600, even whatever, any of those higher end mid-tech prices, anything between $3 and say $1,000, I would totally believe you. I would not hesitate at all. I go, yeah, this is a great knife. The action is spectacular. The fit and finish is totally on point. The design is beautiful. Like, it really offers everything you could ever want out of a high-end folder, but comes in at just a little more than you'd normally pay for your typical, you know, $100 to $200 production knife. And so let's go ahead and get into some of the details on this, instead of just me going on and on about, you know, why, how much I appreciate this knife. I do like it a lot, if you haven't got that figured out by this point. Size and weight here, 8¼ inches overall, and that's leaving out this little glass breaker on the back there. 3½ inches on the blade, and that's if you measure from here. Notice how the handle does kind of follow that plunge grind, so that makes it a little hard to get a solid number for blade length, but 3½ inches is from the highest point, which I think is what most it's kind of the standard way for law enforcement to measure a knife. Handle length here is pretty nice. Remember, 8¼ inches. So, and you know, 3½ inch blade. Normally you'd see about a 5-inch handle here, but 4¾ inches on the handle, which is fairly small for the size of the blade. 3¾ inches of grip area. Okay, so you can see this kind of large area that's designed for your hand to fit between my two thumbs. That measures at 3¾ inches. I have large hands, and it's plenty big enough for me. I would say if you had hands way larger than me, it might get a little cramped for you. Only weighs in at 3.7 ounces, which for that size and that blade length is really nice. So right off the bat, guys, this is a knife that's right in my wheelhouse. You know, anything that's around 3½ inches, the size and weight on this is really good. This is an easy to carry knife that gives me, you know, something substantial enough to get anything done that I need to do, while not, you know, weighing a ton to do it with. All right, blade on this guy is S35VN. We've got a sort of a modified drop point here. Let's get this thing to focus. There we go. Sort of a modified drop point, satin finish, really nice looking blade. Fuller here. A bit of jimping as we go up the spine. Fairly thick blade stock. This is like 138 thousandths, which is a little over 1/8 of an inch. Now, the cool thing is, I think, you know, I probably sound like a broken record here, but this has achieved a really nice balance. So this blade is definitely one that says, hey, this is pretty tough, pretty reliable, pretty robust. You can see it carries quite a bit of material out to the tip. Maybe you can see it if the silly thing would focus. Come on. Sorry, guys. It's decided to focus on the background. So carries quite a bit of weight, quite a bit of material out to the tip, but it's also very thin behind the edge, only 18 thousandths behind the edge, which means when you go to cut something, this actually cuts really, really well. All right, so I mean, about the only sort of drawback I could say, if you're looking at this as a very high-end knife, S35VN is not what I would consider a super high-end steel. It's pretty common these days, but it is a very versatile steel and a very usable, sharpenable, dependable steel. So from that regard, I don't have an issue. Last thing to touch on is this fuller. And the fuller is a really nice touch. One, I think it probably lightens things up a little bit, but also they've gotten the edges here just right so that if I want to open the knife with my thumb or if I want to spidey flick it, it's just enough of an edge that it nicely catches my finger without like tearing my skin up or being sharp or uncomfortable, which is, you know, that's a small detail, but it's one of those important details. On a knife like this, you want it to be fidget friendly. You want it to be comfortable. I don't want to be thinking like every time I touch this fuller, it's hurting my hand or it's feeling sharp or like it's going to tear my skin up. And it really doesn't. So I've got to give extra credit to Real Steel for getting that just right. Okay, so yeah, do I like this blade? Absolutely. I think it's a really, really well balanced blade. Now, is it going to be as slicey as something like a Spyderco Endura? No, the blade stock is a little thicker, but they make up for that by really, really nice edge geometry. So in terms of using this day to day for your EDC stuff, it works really well. Let's move on to the action. I really only have one little hiccup. In terms of the feel of this and the satisfaction of it and how fidgety it is and how comfortable it is, I am really, really, really impressed. In terms of, the smoothness of this pivot, it's absolutely spectacular. And it feels like a much more expensive knife. It just feels perfect. The only little hiccup I have is number one, I don't love it when I can see the detent hole when the knife is deployed. Am I being overly nitpicky? I think I absolutely am because it doesn't infringe on performance in any way, but I can see that. The only other thing that stands out to me about this is the flipper tab. I love that it's a nice small flipper tab and it's actually quite comfortable when you go to use it, but it's kind of in a weird location. It just feels when I look at the knife that's closed, okay, when I just look at it, it feels like it's sitting a little low. Now, that's just me and my aesthetic, and it's really not a fair criticism, but it's just something that I noticed. So I thought I would make mention of it. Now, in terms of actually using this knife and deploying it and closing it, it is spectacular. The lock bar tension is really, really nice. The lock bar is so easy to access. And this is another one of those things that it's a small thing, but I really, really appreciate it. I don't like when I have a hard time getting hold of that lock bar and pushing it over. This is super accessible. It grips your finger just right so that you never have to give it a thought. It just works. And that is when I'm sitting on the couch fidgeting my knife while I'm watching something, that's what I want to see, right? I want it to be something I don't even have to think about. And this really, really gets that right. The detent is absolutely perfect. The dual row ceramic bearings are smooth as silk. And again, this is one of those areas where it feels very high end. It just feels exceptionally well done. So we've talked about the blade, we've talked about the action. Last thing to talk about is the handle. And again, overall, I'm extremely impressed. There's one little hiccup that, is again a slightly unfair criticism, but I'm going to issue it anyway. The thing that stands out to me the most about this handle is how good it feels in hand. The contouring here on the carbon fiber that matches or that kind of ties into the titanium is really, really nice. And it's not something you see on a lot of knives. A lot of times you'll just get squared off titanium here, and then maybe they'll do the contoured carbon fiber. Here, they've really matched this transition, and when you feel it in hand, it just matches your hand so well. The jimping is perfect. It's just grippy enough. The way that they've cupped this out to fit your fingers makes this very, very confidence inspiring. And so All of those things come together to just the ergonomics on this knife are off the charts. There are no hot spots either when you're holding it in hand. There's nothing uncomfortable about deploying the knife or using the knife. In terms of, just day to day getting your knife out to cut something. Again, what I like about it is you don't have to think about it. It just feels right no matter what you're doing. And that's where, I've got to give Real Steel a lot of credit. In terms of materials, you can see it's carbon fiber, 3D carbon fiber over titanium scales. We got a little lanyard hole back here. I could take it or leave it. The only little nitpick I have is, I guess there's two. One is we've got this custom pivot, and these all Ivan's knives. So here's another Bregnitz design, and you can see how the hardware is matching. However, while they've carried that hardware throughout on the Akuma, they didn't carry it throughout on this knife. So you've got back here a couple of T6 torque screws rather than the little flatheads. And I think it's because screws of this size, you just couldn't pull that off. Like see how these are a little bit bigger? So that's one little nitpick. The other thing is we've got a bent clip here, just a stainless steel clip, which is fine and it works fine. Going in and out of pocket, it works really, really well. And it's very minimal, which I do appreciate. I don't know, I feel like it would have been nice to see titanium here on a knife with these materials and this design. Not the end of the world. Finally, I don't need a glass breaker on my knife. This has one. I don't feel like it takes anything away from the knife, but I would have been just as happy if it wasn't there. All right, so those are the things that those are the little nitpicks I have. But frankly, the positive stuff, like the little detail on the backspacer here, like the cleanness and the roundness of this carbon fiber, and the transition into the titanium liners, this is really, really well done. Better than you see on a lot of similarly priced knives. Better than you see on more expensive knives even. This is a really, really nicely put together handle, and really the whole package is consistent this way. Let's go ahead and do some comparisons. I've got a couple of things here that I want to pull in. First off, I'll throw in another Bregnitz design. This is the Real Steel Akuma. If you love Ivan's stuff, but you're going, man, I don't really want to spend $235, this might be a good way to go. Another knife that I need to get my hands on is the Rokut. There have been like a special edition Red Micarta one out there lately. I don't need that. Just the plain Jane one is fine for me. But those might be alternatives to this if you're like me and you really connect with Ivan's designs, but you don't want to spend the $235 on this. By the way, I don't think you're remiss at all in spending that, and you would save a bit if you use my discount code over at White Mountain Knives. But yeah, if you say this is a little too rich for my blood, you can go this route. You can go to the Rokut, and then he's got a pretty nice looking fixed blade that's very similar to this as well. Those are just a few of his designs that stand out to me. I think he's also done a Wii knife, if I'm not mistaken. That's the first comparison that I thought I would throw in there. Now this is, I have to say this is a weird thing to do because I want to throw in some higher end stuff because I really think this is delivering a level of quality and fit and finish that is easily comparable to, any of the high-end titanium frame locks that are out there, but it's also offering something that is exceptionally good and well balanced as an EDC. So let's start off with some of the high-end stuff, and then we'll move into, some other knives that I think are really well done, but more, really good EDC knives. So first off, Riot Torrent is, I like the Torrent just a little bit better than this, but barely. And frankly, in terms of fidget factor, I like this a lot more. If you're one of those guys who likes to sit on the couch like I do and flick your knife open and closed, drive your wife and kids crazy, this is more enjoyable than this. In terms of fit and finish and overall quality, I like some of the features on the Nkosi a little bit more, but if you're going to go with bearings, I want those dual row bearings that this delivers, which is really, really spectacular. I guess the other thing is, many of you are familiar with the size of these two knives, so it should give you an idea that way. Now, I want to bring in a couple of knives here that, that are in a different category, and that is knives that I would recommend as really, really good, if not perfect, for everyday carry. And those are a couple right here. So we've got the Spyderco Para 2, and we've got the Benchmade Super Freak. Both of these knives are knives that I would go, if you want that's something that's just spectacular to have in your pocket all day, every day, that is just a great offering in terms of what a folding knife should be. I think both of these are great options. The thing that's crazy is, yeah, this is a little more expensive, not much more, by the way, for a few more dollars, you can go from this to this. What I want to point out about this knife is around the same size, is going to perform about as well. This really belongs in the category of practically perfect EDC, where I would solidly place these two as well. Finally, the last knife I want to bring in here in comparison is one that I bring in because of the really cool balance that it strikes. So this is the Steel Will Apostate. And this is another knife. The reason I put these two together is because both of these caught me a little off guard. All right, I had some expectation of what I was getting with both of these, and then it turned out that they were way more surprising and way more compelling than I initially thought they would be. All right, so why do I think that? Because both of these are delivering some high-end materials, high-end performance in a package that carries well and that can really strike a balance for EDC or even EDC plus, right? Both of these are pretty well constructed and can do, go a little bit above and beyond what I would normally want to do with my EDC knife as well. And both of them do it at a pretty attractive price point. All right, there you go. Those are my comparisons. Finally, my conclusion, if you've been watching, I really, really like this knife. This is one of those knives where I think if you like knives, you will love it. The action is fantastic. The blade is fantastic. The ergonomics, the feel in hand is fantastic. The materials are great. The design is great. Just, I feel like I'm just ranting and raving here, but this is a really, really good knife. There were a couple of those little hiccups that I mentioned along the way, but the overall package that this knife offers is so good that I can easily overlook a couple little things that I don't like, especially because they don't interfere. All right. If the glass breaker interfered with the ergonomics in some way, that would be a different story, but it doesn't. It's just out of the way. And the fact that it doesn't take away anything from the knife. The pivot, the screws not all matching with the pivot. Again, they're so small that it's hardly noticeable. So those little hiccups that it has, they don't take away from my enthusiasm because they don't interfere with the knife doing what it's supposed to do. So this is an easy knife to recommend, especially if you have wanted to try something that delivers that real high-end experience, but you don't want to break the bank to get there. This is really, really good, and it's better than a lot of its competitors. So there you go, guys. That's my take on the Real Steel Lynx. I love this knife. I love a bunch of the designs from Ivan. I think I should be paying a little more attention to Real Steel because they're delivering some pretty cool stuff right now. So look for that on the channel. I'll try to remedy that over the next few months and share with you some other good stuff. And I mean, maybe they'll completely miss the boat, but this has really sort of gotten me to pay a little more attention. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to check those channel sponsors, and we'll talk to you soon.